We'll give everybody a minute or two to come on. All right, we'll get going here in just a second or two. Allow a couple more people to come on who are RSVP'd. All right, let's get going so we can record for everyone who's missing right now. All right. Hello, guys. Welcome to Glossy's Beauty Debrief here on LinkedIn. I'm Lexi Lebsack, West Coast correspondent at Glossy, and I am joined by Tatiana Pyle, our managing editor of Glossy, and Emily Jensen, Glossy's senior reporter. And of course, we record this as well for all of the people on YouTube who can't tune in right now. So welcome, everybody. So today we're going to discuss TikTok Shop. We've discussed this before in the past, and I don't know. I guess maybe we thought it was going to die down a little bit because of potential legal battles, but it does not seem to be going anywhere anytime soon. We have heard from a lot of brands recently across our dinners and our summit, a lot of them anonymous, about quite a few sort of universal challenges that people are experiencing right now with TikTok Shop. And we're really excited to kind of contextualize some of those and get into some of the details around TikTok Shop and how brands are navigating it right now. But first, I did a little bit of digging and I have a little bit of a legal update for you guys as well as a growth update. And I'll try to keep this super quick, but some sort of not so surprising things and then maybe some surprising things. So, of course, we know that the future of TikTok is still very unclear, but it is looking like it might not be banned in the U.S. per some analyst reports, news reports, and other things. So basically, TikTok Shop launched in September of last year. Currently, 1 out of 3 Americans use TikTok Shop. Numbers I saw for how many people are shopping on TikTok Shop is about the same, about 1 in 3. It is currently the 9th largest retail platform in the U.S., which is pretty big, and much larger in the U.K. There are around 500,000 merchants on TikTok Shop right now. They generated a little over 11 billion in gross merchandise volume for last year. And then they were aiming to make that about 17 billion for this year, but they've already well surpassed that. They have done about 73 billion in the first half of 2024, but only about 23% of that is from TikTok. And of course, we're talking about ByteDance, which is the parent company. But I have to tell you guys, one of the most interesting things that I found is that beauty and personal care is the largest category last year, 22%, and about 2.5 billion of the sales on TikTok were beauty, which I guess, I don't know, Emily and Tatiana, does that surprise you, or do you feel like that's like about on par with what you sort of see or what you've reported on?
I'm not surprised. I think also like that is such, as we've kind of reported on in general, like beauty and kind of wellness and personal care has grown to encompass so many categories. That, you know, it's not just like makeup, obviously, this day and age. And I think those are products that people are really, they tend to be more affordable. People can kind of easily add them to their carts. So no, I'm not too surprised to hear that.
Same.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the low price thing is certainly a part of it. So I did dig up a stat from the Earnest Analytics group, and they said that shoppers earning between $55,000 and $90,000 a year are the largest growing group on TikTok Shop. So that's sort of the sweet spot for any marketers who are sort of trying to market around demographics right now. And then just a little short breakdown on the legality, because I know that this sort of was a big headline and then it kind of went away, but it's still there. So basically in 2020, Trump said that he would ban TikTok, but that was back when Microsoft was rumored to buy it and kind of continue it to grow it here. But on the campaign trail, he said that he was going to save TikTok, so he kind of flipped on that. He joined in June to bolster his campaign, and then of course we're talking about the law signed by Joe Biden in April that the ByteDance, the Chinese owner of the app, was given 9 months to divest, and that of course is on security grounds. TikTok is already banned on devices tied to universities, government, stuff like that. And I also will say that this is also happening. I don't know if anyone's aware of this. This is also happening in Canada right now. So the Canadian government is also working right now to potentially ban TikTok. They've already forced the ByteDance team to shut down their office in Canada for security reasons. And so basically, the deadline for the new law for TikTok being banned in the U.S. is January 19th. That's one day before the inauguration, but there is a chance that they're going to be able to kind of delay this a bit. So TikTok went back to court, and I'm about to wrap up here. I know this is kind of a long one. But basically TikTok went back to court in September, and they pled that it was unconstitutional, that they were being banned. And so we don't know when the court is actually going to come back and say that they've made a decision on this. There's a chance, I've heard from analysts, that the Supreme Court might be getting involved in this. They might deem that the law Biden signed in was unconstitutional. There's also a small chance that Trump could maybe do something if this gets pushed into his administration. This might potentially be something that he could help with if he wants to, or he could encourage someone to buy them if ByteDance even allows that. But I'm wrapping up now. Basically, in ByteDance and the Department of Justice have both asked the courts to make a decision on this by the beginning of December. And that way that will allow for another appeal, if necessary, before the January 19th deadline. Okay, so that's a lot, but basically we kind of don't know that much more, but it is going to come to a head in the next 2 months. So we will have resolution on this, but, yeah, I don't know. Emily, Tatiana, do you guys have any thoughts about what you think will happen here? I know, of course, we're just speculating, but.
I will just say I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, same.
All the whiplash and back and forth.
I know.
I'm so confused. I had no idea that about Canada, actually. So thank you for sharing that. I don't know. I was confused before with some of the ban on TikTok. Is it just sort of posturing from some politicians? I have no idea. I'm confused.
Well, I mean, the big argument is that, basically the big question in the room is who controls the TikTok algorithm? Is it ByteDance or is it the Chinese government? Because of course we know that the way in which the government and businesses interact in China is completely different from how things work here. And the expectation that the government wouldn't be able to, have a control over that if needed, or if wanted, that of course is not something that ByteDance can really say no to. That's not really how it works there. So I think that's the fear. But yeah, but let's get into some of this brand stuff. I know I give you guys too much of a background here, but yeah, Emily, let's start with you. I know you and I were both at the Glossy Beauty and Wellness Summit last week in Napa, where we met with so many brand founders. There were hundreds of people there. But yeah, maybe kick us off with sharing some of these takeaways, and maybe set the stage of sort of where we heard these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, as you said, Lexi, we had tons and tons of industry members, people who work for various beauty brands attending our summit. And we had these really, I think, helpful and really informative town hall sessions where we kind of invited those who work for brands to come in and just share issues they're facing in an anonymous way. So all of this feedback that we'll be sharing now is completely anonymous, but generally sourced from people across the different sectors of brands. And just for some background too, I will say I personally have never purchased anything on TikTok Shop. But there are many beauty brands on there, Rhode is on there, Fenty's on there. They have what seems to be official stores. There's also some what look like unofficial or unauthorized retailers. I've seen some things that seem to be posing as an Ulta. Anyway, just for context. But during our town hall session, TikTok Shop came up for a lot of participants as a big grievance or a kind of sticking point for many of them to navigate. And there were three, I would say, kind of major takeaways from that, three kind of big points that many people shared as issues they were facing. And one was just setting up on TikTok Shop, just literally getting a storefront going, which is interesting. I think on the consumer level, TikTok Shop kind of is supposed to be a very seamless experience, but it sounds like for the business level, getting set up is very challenging. They mentioned that even just, TikTok Shop required, for example, a social security number, which they didn't particularly want to share, their individual social security number or phone number with, for their TikTok Shop, for their brand. And it's very hard to get help as well from TikTok. I think we've heard similar things about setting up on Amazon, for example, or getting counterfeit, unauthorized goods taken off Amazon. It's really hard to talk to a human person there. including for these large brands and companies as well. So that was a point of frustration. Some shared, for example, that working with third-party kind of agents or parties can be helpful to help navigate that just internally, that they don't have the know-how how to get set up. That can be a huge roadblock. Another thing that came up as well is just like this kind of race to the bottom in terms of discounting. I think if you've scrolled through TikTok Shop, you'll probably see you get really inundated with like deals and markdowns and discounts, especially like this week. And I'm sure next week even more. There's some Black Friday deals popping up already, Cyber Monday, things like that. But it sounds like all year, that's kind of the name of the game on TikTok Shop, is about discounting. And that is very challenging, it sounded like, for some of these brands in terms of like, to what end are you discounting? If you keep discounting, you're at a certain point not making a margin on those sales. But it seems to be what's necessary to maybe get attention or get sales. But that also ties in, I think, to the third issue that came up for a lot of these brands, which is the relationship with their other retailers. So if you're stocked, for example, at Sephora or Ulta, or these more traditional brick and mortar and online retailers, they are not happy with the brands also being on TikTok Shop, it sounds like. And I think the discounting is part of that. Like, you know, as we all kind of know, like Sephora doesn't tend to do a ton of discounting. You know, they're very select about it. So if you're selling your product on Sephora at full price and then it's on TikTok Shop for 20% off, as you know, we can all imagine Sephora or Ulta or whomever is not too happy about that. So they brought that up as kind of an issue. You know, we even heard that some were saying that contracts from these retailers are also saying you can't sell on TikTok Shop, which is challenging for brands because they also feel like they need to be on TikTok Shop to reach new consumers. Some of them mentioned they sort of don't call TikTok Shop a retailer, let's say. I guess this is a kind of way of doing it maybe without being in conflict with some of these contracts. So very interesting. And I think too, just, you know, as you were saying, like Lexi, with all these legal issues, like TikTok is a very new platform still. And I think people are still figuring out just like how to use it, how to navigate it. Obviously there's a lot of eyeballs on it. So it's very desirable to get on there, but at what point is it worth it? You know, is it worth it for visibility or for actual sales? I think people are still figuring that out.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, Emily, what you said about someone saying we don't call it a retailer. we use our words very, 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 like sort of carefully there. But I mean, I do think that's kind of true to a certain extent with a lot of strategies because it's kind of just a marketing play. Like from the brands that we spoke to, because of the discounting, you're not really making a lot of money here. The margins are so slim. But yeah, I do think that I don't know. I mean, you tell me if this was your takeaway too, but I feel like the big takeaway was kind of like, if you want to have success, and I think this kind of bleeds into a little bit what Tatiana is going to talk about, but I think it's like, if you want to have success with this, you kind of just have to outsource it. You kind of just have to like get a company. And I know there are a lot of companies out there, a lot of vendors who, of course, it's not ideal to, you know, have another person in the mix or another group in the mix taking their cut, but, you know, where you can just basically sell your product. It's just a straight, arrangement where you sell to one of these companies and then they just like sell the product. They resell it or whatever. So it's like it's a distributor model basically for TikTok Shop. And you can give a company kind of like all the rights to own your brand on TikTok and you just kind of sell them the product at a big discount and then they kind of do what they want with it. But, I don't know. It seems like less of a headache, but of course, like what are the margins? It must be very challenging.
Yeah, totally. And as you were saying, yeah, it's like if you're already discounting and you're already then using like a third party agent, yeah, like are you really making any money or are you just kind of existing on there? I'm curious if, you know, TikTok Shop is still pretty new. It's definitely not, like a premium buying experience right now from what I can see, but I'm curious if it'll go more the way of like Amazon in the future where, you know, now Amazon Beauty does have a more premium look and feel. And they are, you know, as we've talked about, working more directly with, you know, the big companies like Estee Lauder. And once you kind of buy into Amazon, then they're willing to help you out directly in getting set up and having more control and direct sales with those consumers.
Yeah. It feels like a bit like it can't continue the way it's going because the prices are just so discounted. So it's like, I wonder if I don't really know. I mean, there must be, maybe anyone who's listening can raise their hand and tell me there must be a marketing term for this. I'm sure there is, but it basically, it's like the strategy of like, bringing people in, giving them like all these amazing discounts for quite a long time until they make it a habit shopping there. And then of course they're going to have to eventually, go back to like more traditional pricing. But Tatiana, you covered, right, a bit, over the last week or two, a little bit about how brands are sort of building out their teams. Am I right in that? Did I read that right?
Yeah, so during the Beauty Leaders Dinner, which Lexi attended last week or the week before last, the times are kind of blending into one another at this point. But I was listening to some audio. We were trying to pull some interesting takeaways from the conversation. And there were two or three highlights that I grabbed from that combo that I thought were interesting and very useful for brands trying to figure out how to navigate this landscape. The first thing I just want to like piggyback off what you both had said, that this platform or this extension of TikTok is only a year-ish old. They launched it in the US in September of last year. So I think while, TikTok has become so integrated in a lot of brands marketing strategies, or it has become a, very essential tool for many people to increase brand awareness and their presence amongst or facilitate community building amongst consumers. It's only a year old. So there are a lot of kinks and there are a lot of obstacles and challenges that brands are facing and figuring out and navigating. And I think especially for more niche brands, they're realizing that, if an Estee Lauder can get on in the platform, they have a ton more resources to kind of throw at it to figure out how to quickly navigate it versus, a brand that's maybe exclusively DCC and may not have the bandwidth to open up a TikTok shop. So I think that was one of the more interesting conversations that came from the Beauty Leaders Dinner. A lot of brands are just trying to figure out, if we're only a 10-person company, we're very small and we have humble earnings. Who needs to be at the helm of the TikTok shop? And I think they're also realizing that it requires a very specialized team, because I think a lot of people were thinking, well, it's e-commerce, so maybe we can get our e-commerce team to just manage TikTok shop, but also it requires a level of expertise in affiliate marketing because you're typically tapping creators, which was really interesting. I think this is going to be something that we'll continue to talk about moving forward, is that there is a clear distinction between the traditional content creator on TikTok who can help market your product versus an affiliate creator who is going to help sell your product. And those two things can be synonymous with each other, but they're not mutually exclusive. So a creator may not always be a great seller, and a seller may not always be a great promoter. So brands are also, figuring out who to leverage when it comes to selling and marketing their products on the platform. But yeah, one of the things that a lot of the brands were talking about during the Beauty Leaders Dinner was that, we're realizing that we need a more multifaceted team when it comes to navigating TikTok shop, which is why, as you said, Lexi, earlier, brands are beginning to outsource. I think a lot of brands initially hit the ground running with TikTok shop and just they thought, let me just host a bunch of lives every day. Kind of like that QVC-esque type of strategy. And they realized that it wasn't necessarily working for them. And it was also costing a lot of dollars and time. And they weren't seeing a huge return on investment. So now, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of brands are beginning to tap on, lean in on the affiliate creator strategy and also outsourcing and just creating partnerships with third-party brands to sell and promote their products because it tends to be more cost-effective. I also thought it was really interesting. They were talking about how TikTok Shop was created to compete with the likes of like an Amazon Marketplace, for instance. And so a lot of brands are beginning to understand a little bit more thoroughly, what makes a product TikTok shop sellable versus what makes a product sellable or marketable on an Amazon, for instance. And so they're realizing that they have to separate the assortment based off the channel. And that has become an interesting talking point because you would think, if a $5 lip gloss is going to do well on an Amazon, it should do well on a TikTok. But I think those are two totally complete, or in some cases, they can be completely different consumers and they're looking for different things based off the brand. So I think that'll also be a huge like strategy driver moving forward with TikTok Shop. It's like, how do I create an assortment that makes sense for TikTok Shop? And also like it's differentiated enough from the other platforms. So, you don't need to go to Amazon to purchase the item. You can just stay exclusively on the shop and like complete the purchase through this platform. So that was a really interesting takeaway too. But I think, moving forward, a lot of brands are going to be coming to terms with like, does it make sense for us as a brand to be our own TikTok shop storefront, or does it make sense to, outsource and get a third party um, a distributor?
Oh wow, Tatiana, such great call outs there. And you're so right. I feel like it is really like that question of like, what are we going to do? Are we going to like bring this in house? Are we going to put this with our retailers? Are we going to like have this live under our marketing team? Is it like where is it like going to live and who's going to manage it? I can't imagine doing all of this in house as a brand without additional resources, but I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the beauty of TikTok is that it's so, for lack of better words, like just chaotic in a sense. Like it's so informal that a lot of people think, hey, I can just do a live and that's it. But, as Emily mentioned earlier, there's a lot of structure that is behind the scenes that I think TikTok itself is still implementing and navigating too. So it's not as simple as just, hey, like we have a in-house studio, let's just go on live and sell and promote these products. I think the consumers are beginning to ask for and look for a little bit more structure on TikTok. At least as it relates to the shop. I think in the beginning, a lot of brands were just promoting everything. But now there's so much competition. So you really have to fine tune the strategy and the assortments to, be distinct enough, but also strategic enough. And with it only being a year old, I think we forget that like everyone on both sides of the coin are figuring out how to make this thing, have the legs to last long.
Yeah, for sure. I want to go back to something you said, Tatiana, that made me realize that I've also been hearing this, and it's that creators who are, I guess, more like affiliate focused creators who are like the top sellers on TikTok Shop are not the same creators that are like killing it on Instagram or maybe doing brand deals elsewhere. These are totally different creators. And I heard someone say in one of our events recently that the creators who really sell, they're not going to look like who you think they are. And that's not like a physical thing, but like they're not going to be the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a really good call out. It's like, it's a totally different influencer.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't even know if like the affiliate creator market has even actually become a thing yet, but it will be, I'm sure, especially as TikTok begins to fine tune its strategy. But like, you can be scrolling on TikTok, for instance, on your For You page, and then you see someone trying to promote like the coconut oil to pull oil in, and it's just a normal person, and they could probably have 60,000 likes. And that's part of the reason why these kind of odd-in brands and products are performing so well. It's because it's really just ordinary people who have become these affiliate creators, and it's different. They're not trying to build a brand per se. They're really just trying to earn money. So it's a different type of creator, and there is some like cross sections between the two, but I find it to be really interesting. And I think next year it's really going to be, and even actually as we um, lean more into or as we transition into the holiday season, I think we'll be seeing a lot of like everyday people just looking to promote products versus brands really leaning on the bigger names to sell on the shop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my God. So it's so funny you mentioned the coconut oil pulling, because I look at the data a lot, and it's Guru Nanda, which is like that brand. And they are just continually like either the top seller across TikTok Shop or like in the top 5. And they're like just absolutely killing it. And I think that it's a lot of those things that are highly visual. Or I think it's like kind of the things that have more of like a holistic feeling as well. Like I was looking at some data this morning, and it's like different peptides, various wellness things, oil pulling, of course. Like these are kind of like the standouts, TikTok shop selling, which I think is like very interesting because it feels different from, well, I guess maybe it doesn't feel that different, but it does feel a little bit different than the other platforms.
Yeah, and this is kind of like an aside, as you mentioned, oil pulling being one of the number one products. I really do think for especially like the luxury brands, and kind of to the point that we were talking about earlier with like the discrepancy between the sale versus like them being on like a Sephora or such. Like, how do you navigate marketing or pricing your product on TikTok Shop versus, with your other retail partners? I think that's also going to be a really big thing in addition to the assortment, because the oil pulling product, I believe it's like $3. You're not going to see a luxury brand have their lipstick on sale for $3. That doesn't make sense. So it'll be really interesting to see the brands that win on the shop moving forward too.
Yeah. I think we should talk a little bit about live selling, just for the last few minutes here, but I did a story like a while back, excuse me, where we interviewed Sarah Potempa for the podcast and did a little post and everything. And I think that live selling is like very much a huge part of this. I saw some data this morning that looked at how sales are coming together. And they looked from, this is from Charm.io, which is an analytics company. And so from September of last year to September of this year, so the first year of TikTok Shop, pre-recorded video did $2.5 billion worth of sale. And so of course that's just like videos that people post. And then live streaming did 1 billion. And so of course pre-recorded video did a lot better, but live streaming is still, like a big part of this and coming up. I just read in Modern Retail, and we can kind of link these articles later. But to the invite, but I read in Modern Retail as well this morning that TikTok just did a big event, where they are, very much trying to get their brands to start live streaming, to live sell. They're teaching them how. They're going over best practices, and they're really pushing this. So I feel like this is probably going to be, I don't know. They're certainly pushing it. And of course, this is popular in Asia, in their other sort of markets that are very popular. So yeah, I don't know, but I think it's definitely going to be the future. But curious what you guys think.
I'm also very curious about it. There's like a QVC element as we were talking about, which kind of cracks me up because that seems very out of step with how people shop now. But maybe that's what people want again.
I know. I think it's like Sarah Potempa, and everyone should listen to the podcast episode. I think it was a really great she's one of the top sellers for her Beach Waver curling iron and all of her 100 SKUs that they sell across there. But yeah, I think it's I feel like you say community one more time and it's like we get it. But it's community, right? It's like she was talking about how people will get on every single week with them, and they know them, and they feel a bit sense of community, and they feel like they know her family. And that's really been, I think, I feel like one of the better case studies around sort of like how to have success with live selling. But yeah, she's a QVC alum though. So that's the whole part of it.
Lexi, I'm curious, did she share like the cadence in which she does these live sellings? Is it multiple times a day or multiple times a week or both?
Yeah, it's multiple times a week. She when I first spoke to her, she was telling me about these like seasons and these shows, and I was like, I'm sorry, I have to stop you. What are you talking about? Like, are they doing series like seasons? And she was like, no, that's just what we call them. We'll create like a season, like a first season of something, and we'll do 8 weekly episodes, or we'll do however many. So they're basically just building in an entire calendar how they're doing these things. And it allows people to really show up at the same time every week and know this is the packing show. And I'm going to see orders get packed, and Sarah and her brother-in-law and her kid and all of these people that people have grown to love, are really going to basically pack my goods, and we're going to talk and tell stories and listen to music and kind of just have this fun time. And, so it's very scheduled out. She, has them at certain times, and then she'll also just go live. And, we're seeing this, of course, with a lot of the various brands that are having success right now on TikTok Shop. They'll go live for hours. They'll just basically be having conversations. They'll do, different tutorials. They'll style things. They'll show them the office. They'll walk them around. It's just a whole thing where they'll just go live for hours and hours and
hours. Wow. I also wonder, is she the person who is in front of the camera, or has she tapped creators because I'm like, that has to be exhausting. How are you able to just sell for hours and hours? Are they changing out the hosts throughout these sessions?
Oh yeah, definitely. So she has like her brother-in-law, for example, works for the family. It's a family business. But her brother-in-law works there. So he has a little like show now as well where he does certain things. And then she taps influencers and other creators as well. So they actually just opened up a new office in New York. And they have, in the Domino Sugar Building, and they have a little studio in there. So they have like, a couple like, shampoo bowls, and they have an area for styling and stuff. And so her goal is to be live selling, live streaming, like constantly, and basically be able to have influencers and other experts and stylists and stuff come in and do little shows and segments. So it's like a little mini QVC over there. And while I think that her story is very valuable for anyone who wants to listen, and a great case study, like there are a lot of brands that are doing that as well. We see Haus Labs doing that. We see a couple like influencer makeup brands that I know are having success with this as well. So it's definitely a great strategy for people who are chronically online on TikTok all the time and looking for community. Awesome. Well, this was such a great conversation. We will post this on YouTube as well if anyone wants to forward it along to a colleague or listen again. And we'll also put some of the links as well talked about for our stories into the invite. And Tatiana and Emily, thank you for doing this with me.
Thanks
everyone. Yeah. All right. See you guys all again in 2 weeks for another topic.
Bye.